If you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll notice a lot of background footage from many different places. I've lived in Cambodia on two separate occasions, I stayed in Budapest for 3 months, I visited Japan, the Czech Republic, Serbia, Italy, France, and if all goes well, I'll be moving to Thailand later this year. You might expect my busy passport to mean that I've been funding these travels with Daddy's checkbook, or that I won the lottery. Truthfully, as of February 2024, I've got about $400 to my name, and of most of my travels, I left the US with only a little more than that in hard cash. Today, I want to show you how you too can travel and live abroad. Number 1. Manage your expectations. My first time out of the country was for a study abroad program with my college. It was paid for via student loans, from the cost of the program itself to the budget I kept while there. I stayed for a month in Prague and essentially didn't look at my bank account more than once a week once I realized that the conversion rate meant that I was always spending less than I would in the United States, even if I did go wild and ordered more expensive food. However, this was only for a month. I was in college, I kept both my car and the room I was renting for when I came back. My second time living abroad was for an English teaching job in Cambodia, which I was hired for through an online interview. I was hired and asked to move within 2 weeks. I didn't even know where Cambodia was when I said yes, and I certainly didn't know what I was signing up for. Because this was a job and one which hired me pre-bachelor's degree, I was not picked up from the airport, given housing, or honestly any information about moving from the US. I attempted to mitigate the confusion by finding housing before arrival, but I ended up picking a place close to the headquarters of the school, not the branch I was actually working for. I was overpaying for rent, had a long commute, all of my clothes did not meet the expectations of my coworkers because Cambodia has a far more modest culture than the US, and I was thrown into a classroom without any training or a teaching aid. These two experiences helped me to realize that living abroad was not as simple as getting on a plane and getting a job, and that I had to do a lot more research before picking my next destination. My third time abroad was in Budapest. This was another urgent hiring situation, and while this company did provide airport pickup, housing, and a far more informational introduction package, I ignored the employee reviews, which complained of racism, late payments, and a general negative work environment, only to find out that all of those complaints were true. Quite simply, if you are intending to live abroad, understand what you are getting into. The better programs will offer airport pickup, accommodation assistance, and other perks, but those programs will also ask for more experience or more work from you to justify that spending. Having more experience of thinking on my feet, my next stint abroad will once again be in Asia, where I am seeking employment in Thailand. I want a work-life balance, to live in an area that has other expats and English-speaking services, especially medical professionals, and a better contract. Namely, a 3-month trial option, as it often takes that long for the first stage of culture shock, the honeymoon phase, and to move into the frustration phase. Otherwise, since I am waiting to hear back about graduate school programs for the fall, a semester-long contract is a great option for me. Number 2. Find work. Most schools seeking English teachers post jobs online or use recruiters. Depending on what you're looking for, you can have it as easy as sending your resume and information about the job you want and get a list of options in return. Or you may have to search and apply on your own. You should never pay for a recruiter. The recruiter is paid by the school for a match. This does mean that they are working for the school's benefit and not your own, so you may get offers that you don't want, but you can simply turn them down or find a better recruiter. You can also teach abroad without a bachelor's degree, though your options will be more limited. Cambodia, along with many countries in South America, will hire you as long as you're professional, well-spoken, and from an English-speaking country. Having a bachelor's in any category will open a lot of doors, but the most options and highest pay are offered to registered teachers and TEFL graduates. Work is pretty easy to find, though your mileage may vary. You don't have to teach children. Often adult classes are available. Or if you prefer to teach younger students, you can go for kindergarten or pre-K levels where the focus is more on immersion learning, and you simply need to speak English around them. I think that immersion classes are the hardest, as you need to remain bubbly and talk almost constantly to be effective. But it really depends on you and how comfortable you are working with various ages. Once you find a job, though, your next step is to actually get ready to move. Number 3. Keep a budget. I hate budgets. I prefer to think of money as a social construct that isn't really real, but various bills argue otherwise. You will need some money finagling options to leave the country. Some programs will offer incentives like interest-free startup loans, company housing, or reimbursed flights, but there are startup costs that you just can't get rid of. You need to pay for the flight there. One-way flights usually aren't that bad, and typically you find something in the $500 to $600 range. I recommend not skimping and getting a flight with minimal layovers and connections. Using programs like Skyscanner, where you save money by switching airlines and changing flights, can appear to save you money, but are also far more likely to result in lost luggage, visa, and connection issues. It's a lot more difficult to mail things you need than it costs to just bring them with you. So that being said, most international flights include 2 pieces of luggage and a carry-on. If you cannot afford the flight in full, I recommend using a payment plan. There are plenty out there, from PayPal to Affirm. I also recommend booking directly with an airline and not through something like Hotel.com or any other third-party purchasing site. When I was moving from Cambodia to Budapest last year, my flights went from Cambodia to the Philippines, Philippines to Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia to Hungary. Now, I was able to get through to Saudi Arabia with no problem, but it turned out that because I chose the cheapest airline, Wizz Air, not only did I go to Jeddah Airport, which is essentially an airport for a religious commute, but that I wasn't automatically registered for a transit visa. If I had chosen any other airline, they would have automatically done it. And this was despite me having experienced this before and having done the research and called the embassy, and nobody told me I needed this visa. Well, it was Labor Day weekend. It is 4 a.m. in the U.S. I call my parents. My card isn't working. The bank's closed. Can't access money even though my parents send me some. I'm kind of screwed. If it wasn't for the kindness of strangers, as in the manager of the airport literally paid for the visa for me and had a friend drive me to the appropriate terminal, which was literally miles away, I would have been stuck in Saudi Arabia or forced to return back to the Philippines. So, trust me, when it comes to picking an airline, you want to just go with one airline where your luggage is going to be transferred for you, where you don't have to worry about leaving the lounge, and typically, if you're going to go through a country that requires a transit visa, booking directly through the airline, they will typically tell you or arrange for it for you. This time I'm looking at a flight, from Atlanta to Bangkok, and I'll be stopping in Qatar. And they actually have a program where if your layover is more than 6 hours, you get a free hotel room. And that's not something that will be arranged unless you go through specific airlines. Yes, I could get a cheaper flight, but I would prefer to be able to bring 2 full things of luggage with all the food and basic amenities that I need. You are also going to need money to live off of until your first check. Like most jobs, you will tend to get your first check one pay period late as you start, so don't rely on a quick check to smooth things out. Most countries have hostels or cheap hotels, so make sure you research options in the city and have enough to cover at least a month's rent. Food tends to be one of the easier things to get, and especially so in Asia, where street food is very common and very cheap. Still, I always bring a few self-contained items to hold me over, just in case. After flying from Cambodia to Budapest, my card was blocked for being in several countries in a short period of time, over the Labor Day weekend. I couldn't access any money for 4 days and had nothing but tea and a couple packets of ramen from my company-provided Airbnb to live off of. Even if you have money, you might not be able to access it. Better to be overprepared than underprepared, and trust me, better to have some ramen on hand than to starve. And of course, you're going to need to be able to get around. I prefer a taxi on arrival because multiple pieces of luggage are hard to wrangle on public transportation. Sometimes you don't have a choice, but if you do happen to have the ability to budget for it, I would. Some places have cheaper transport than others, such as Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam, which have tuk-tuks available for very cheap. It costs about $5 to get from Phnom Penh's airport to the city center. You also need to be able to get to work, which means living close enough to walk, renting a vehicle, or paying someone to drive you. You need the job, so keep that in mind when planning your budget. Transportation and timeliness are key. Number 4, have a backup plan. Living abroad doesn't always work out. Things happen. Homesickness gets you. Regular sickness gets you. Someone could die, or you can just decide you don't like it. That's fine and all, but coming back to the US with nothing to your name is an awful plan that will likely result in you living in a storage unit or couch surfing. The first time I left, I didn't sell my car or motorcycle because a car provides not just transportation, but potentially a place to live if needed. Having a friend or family who's willing to let you stay with them until you find a place to live, be it an apartment or just a room for rent, is also important. It doesn't always turn out well if you decide to leave early, so you can't always count on a final check. Better to quit or leave after getting paid, and be sure to keep it quiet because often companies reward snitching if it saves them a buck or two. Otherwise, have a job lined up. A lot of cram schools hire year-round. Some locations will be willing to ignore job hopping. Others will want to hear from your past employer. Be mindful of these bridges if you decide to burn them. And number 5, Prepare for your next destination. Some destinations require more planning than others. Korea and China require apostille degrees, which is hard to do from outside the US. Other schools may require you to do work on your visa prior to arrival, which can cost you money. Make sure you know where you're going far enough in advance that you can prepare for it. For example, I moved directly from Cambodia to Budapest and then winter hit. All my clothes were for warm weather, and it was really hard to make a wardrobe on a dime before it got cold. Overall, moving abroad isn't difficult, or at least it's not as difficult as it seems. You need some money to get off the ground, but as long as you're willing to be flexible, adaptable, and able to make sacrifices, you can often make it through the arrival period. From then on, it's just a matter of not blowing through your paycheck before the next one comes, and making an effort to enjoy living somewhere new, which means being at least a little social, seeking out new friends, new experiences, and seeing where your new life takes you. This, dear viewers, is where we part. So I currently have a contract for 6 months teaching abroad in Thailand. I'll be arriving for 1 month of training and then starting teaching actually in May. It'll be in a smaller town in Thailand, not in Bangkok. And I'm really looking forward to it because I'm still having my fingers crossed for getting into a grad school this fall. And this would allow me to finish the contract without having to cancel early, which means getting a good reference and no penalties, and being able to go directly to grad school if needed. I'm especially excited because Thailand is warm, it's great weather, and it's very cheap. It's cheaper even than Cambodia was. I'm really hoping to be able to put aside a decent amount of savings each month. The pay tends to center around $1,100 a month. You can maybe get more depending on if you're willing to do extra tutoring outside of class, but truthfully, you can live off of $500 a month easy. And to be quite honest, most of my money does not go towards going out and doing things, it goes towards food. So food is not expensive in Thailand, so it all kind of works out. I definitely recommend teaching abroad for a gap year program if you just want a break, and especially because I graduated last August and I've been trying to search for work here in the US and I've just not been able to find anything besides retail or fast food. And to be honest, if I'm gonna have to work a shitty job I hate, might as well work a shitty job I hate in a cool new place. Overall, I think that it's a fun experience. Yes, there can be ups and downs. I've been almost kidnapped. I've been robbed. I've had some bad experiences, but I've also had some really great ones, and I wouldn't give that up for anything. I do think, like I said, that it's important to go with as much money as you can scrounge up. For me, I'm going to probably make enough money to pay for my flight, and then my goal is to have $1,000 to live off of until I first check, but there's no guarantee I'll have that much. The key here is knowing how to budget, knowing how to not go crazy with your spending, and being okay with living like the locals, which I'm happy with, but not everyone is willing to go without air conditioning. With all that in mind, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, leave them in the comment section down below. And if you're interested in traveling with me, I'm actually able to give recommendations for people who have bachelor's degrees and are interested in teaching abroad, so if that is you, let me know, and I can hook you up with a job. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.